Yeah, it seems like a really good program.
He's sitting up there.
The kids that we had, we did a lot with like the questions that you guys had sent. So it was a little mix up in the amount of time that when I had gotten them. So I put together some really good questions. I'll share those with you. We compared that with Stoddard Mansion School in Philadelphia. It was a short video clip. Diane Sawyer went in ABC News into the school. We talked about that. There's a military school that we just kind of compare and contrasted in Maryland that we just did as kind of a quick bell work, kind of compared and contrasted that. So as an alternative program, a lot of students were kind of comparing and contrasting some of the rules, some of the daily routines here, and the way things were going there, and some really good discussions we had in the classroom. So.
Can we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, we get started. So, you guys can have a seat. So we'll edit this at the end. It's all Thank you guys for your patience. We have a great panel today. What I'm going to have them do is kind of introduce themselves and quickly say a little bit about themselves for the speaker series, and then we're going to get right down to business. There'll be a couple other students who might join us. I'll ask them to kind of come in quietly. But without further ado, here's our panel.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Led Nagala. I'm an assistant U.S. attorney in the Major Crimes and National Security Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Just to tell you a little bit about what the U.S. Attorney's Office is, it's the federal prosecution arm of the Department of Justice. And we have 3 offices in Connecticut. We have one in Hartford, one in Bridgeport, and one in New Haven. And our job is, for those of us who do the criminal work, is to prosecute federal crimes. So in my unit, we do everything from identity theft to bank robbery to child exploitation to national security.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Leeming. I'm also an assistant United States attorney. Sometimes we just call each other federal prosecutors. I work in Hartford, and I work in the violent crime and narcotics unit. I work closely with this gentleman who will introduce himself in a minute with the FBI. We do mostly what we call sort of group or gang-related investigations, typically the gangs that are involved in violence. But we also focus a lot on narcotics activity, which is often associated with a lot of the violence. So a lot of the investigations we do happen or occur in this area, Hartford and the surrounding communities. And like I said, I'll turn it over to Special Agent Medina.
Hi guys, my name is Gennaro Medina. I'm a special agent with the FBI. I've been doing this for 14 years now. I'm the task force coordinator for the gang task force in Hartford. As you heard AUSA Leeming talk about, we work a lot of the gang cases. We work a lot of drug cases as well. Pretty much a lot of our cases center around Hartford, but it doesn't pigeonhole us just to Hartford. We have done other cases outside of Hartford, Waterbury, East Hartford, Meriden, Wallingford, and those areas. A lot of our cases involve a conspiracy type case where we just don't go and look for that one guy and then we're done. We kind of get everybody that's involved in that case. And sometimes you'll see it in the paper where the feds arrested 20, 30 people or whatever. Those are the kind of cases that we work on.
What's up, everyone? So I'm Brent. Had the opportunity to meet a lot of you when you walked in. So I'm the statewide coordinator of a program called Project Longevity, which is a law enforcement and community gun violence reduction initiative that's supported by a partnership between the Office of the Governor and the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Connecticut. And what we do is we focus, we operate in Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven, and we focus on gangs or groups in each of these cities that contribute or perpetuate gun violence. So oftentimes these guys are essentially killing each other, right? The violence is contained within these gangs or groups, and so we try to address that primarily through communication and when necessary through a law enforcement action. So it's just like Gennaro mentioned, there are these large incarcerations because a group is deemed to be the most violent group in a particular city. And so the goal is to provide alternatives. So it's to provide guys who want to get out of the street life with an opportunity to do so. So we work with a number of partners in the community to support them in any way that we can in effort to reduce the gun violence. So thank you all for having us here, and I appreciate you giving us your time. And so this film discussion series is called Breaking the Cipher. And so I'm originally from New York City. I was born in Harlem, I grew up in the Bronx. And one of the reasons that I decided to get involved with Project Longevity is because I lost about 12 friends to gun violence. I lost a number of friends to the streets. I had a lot of friends of mine who were locked up while in high school on gun charges, and I didn't see them until I was in my mid-20s when they were released. And so it affected me personally. But a lot of them were my friends, and there are things that we did growing up on the block, hanging out in the building or sometimes in front of the building because we didn't really have a lot of places to go. We would have what's called a cipher, right? So some of you guys might be familiar with that word, but essentially it was just us hanging out. And so a lot of times people thought we were selling drugs, but we weren't, right? We were just talking about life, things that mattered to us. Sometimes there were cultural things, sometimes we talk about things like Meek Mill's going after Drake, but this is in the 90s, so we were talking about a different group of rap artists. But
LL,
you know,
cannabis.
we'll talk about LL, yep, cannabis, yep. NYPD had a particular reputation in communities that I grew up in. So sometimes we talk about the cops and the practices involving policing in our neighborhoods. We talk about violence. We talk about racial discrimination, things that matter to us, right? And we'd also talk about what we could do or how we felt we were challenged. But at the end of the day, everyone's opinion was respected. And it was all about just communicating and sharing your thoughts, your peace of mind, right? And so ciphers, you know, it can also mean a code, right, or an encryption. And so in professional communities and in our communities that we grew up in, we're all having conversations. We're all talking to each other, right? But the problem is we're not talking with each other, right? So this gives us an opportunity to speak like friends, right? In a circle amongst ourselves about things that matter to us. And what we're going to be talking about today is Last Chance High. And so you guys had the opportunity to view the film in Mr. Sasso's class, and it touches on a number of things. And one of the things that I also do is I sit on the Governor's Youth and Urban Violence Commission. And so it's basically a bunch of adults who talk about public policy in effort to reduce violence or to divert young people like yourselves from incarceration. But we don't have young people at the table, right? So the conversation stays in a particular silo. And so I'm looking to hear from you guys. I want you guys to speak freely. I know you just met us, but talk as if we're friends.
Cool.
All right?
So
You
we
can
got,
ask us
there's
questions, too.
3 here that actually were part of the current event class. I guess there was an issue trying to get some of the kids to come to the program and some other students that would definitely benefit from that. That's what Dr. Alice just told me. So some of them haven't been exposed to it. Some of them are from my U.S. history class. So does one of you guys want to give like a synopsis of what Last Chance High was all about? For the people that didn't watch it? Summary?
Oh, Mr. B using that word.
Yes.
Yeah, but them kids, they wild. They be fighting every day. They grow up, but they grow up bad. Like they got a lot of bad history. Their stories, their backgrounds, they explain everything. Like one dude, little sister died, his mom died, brother locked up, father locked up. Like, he go crazy, and I understand. Like if everything happening to you, bad things happen, you gonna act a certain way. You're not gonna act good. It was on your mind all day. I understand where they be coming from, but they be wild. They be wild in school, bro. Beating up little girls. They wild. I can see it, so. I did not see it. You wasn't? You was there?
Oh, you want me to talk?
Sure.
Cause you know y'all looking so. Basically, what it was about, pretty much the same thing he said, but it was a lot of kids that was basically missing that family bond, like the mother, the father relationship. They didn't have that, so that was probably why they act the way they did. But at the same time, there's a lot of kids, you know, they blame their parents for not being there, for the way of them acting a certain way. But I feel that you shouldn't blame your parents for the situations or some of the problems that you do or consequences or something like that. I used to be a bad little kid, you know, fight a lot, didn't care, but I always blame my parents for not being there. Was the reason why, you know, I was acting the way I was. But
How'd you change?
I mean, I had to realize that life is not all about fighting or getting my way. So, I kind of changed.
So, I'm glad you got, so, the gentleman that you were talking about is Cortez.
Yeah, right.
He's an eighth grader. And, you know, I think your recollection, your memory of it is fairly accurate, right? So Cortez, his brother was set up
Yeah, his brother
and
got set up.
kidnapped, killed in the back of a van. His little sister died, she was beat to death. His father serving a 60-year term in a maximum security prison for murder and attempted murder. So who does he have left in his life, right?
Probably his grandma.
His grandmother, yep.
I think his mom died. Didn't
Yeah. So,
he? He was wild too. He was bullying little kids, punching them all.
yeah, he was angry. He fought every day, right? Didn't really have a father figure or a strong parental figure in his life. But we also had a young lady, a Latina, Puerto Rican young lady. Anybody
Crystal.
remember?
She was out of control.
Crystal? Yep.
She was out of control.
She did have a parent in her life. She had her mother, right?
Well, her
And she
mom,
disrespected her.
her mom couldn't control her.
Yeah.
She would not show up to home for days.
Bring her to my home.
I missed that part.
Oh, my God.
Whack that.
Her name is Crystal.
My kids don't do that though.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, right? So on one end you have Cortez, who doesn't have, you know, strong parents in his life. But then you have Crystal, whose mother seems to be trying.
She's showing out.
Yeah.
She's
So
not about what she's doing. She's
You-
making a scene.
and you think that's a reflection of her mother in any way?
Her mom don't show her no bad.
Her mom look like she don't care.
Her mom be yelling at her. She just don't listen.
A parent give up too.
I'm sorry?
I said a parent could give up too.
That's right. That's right.
Not her mom. Her mom had to sit down with her counselors, everything.
You're gonna get fed up if you keep trying.
You know, nothing changes.
Does anybody know of anyone or have someone in their family who's been incarcerated?
I know a lot of people. You know,
That they're in jail.
Oh,
For what? What are they in jail for?
why?
My uncle beat her white girl.
See, you know.
My brothers are in jail for home invasion. And one of them attempted murder. A whole bunch of other charges.
Yeah, same here. You know,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's life though.
they might come back.
Life?
They got mics with
You talked about you was getting into fights a lot. Did you see where you was headed? Is that part of the reason why you kind of made a change?
No. The
The
reason why,
DN. And for girls.
see, in general, I mean, I could, you know, relate to the other kid's situation, but my situation was different. I had completely no one, so I was bad. I took it amongst myself to be bad. But the reason why I changed, cause I got goals. I have a lot of goals. So in order for me to reach my goals, I have to change my behavior. Although actions speak louder than words.
A lot of people that I see don't have a goal. They have sort of, I guess I would say, surrender to the inevitability that they'll either die young or go to jail. So they act that way. They, you know, they care. They don't really want to go to jail, but a lot of them view it as something that's going to happen.
It's crazy. Is it a lot like that?
A lot like that.
People that just
She acting wild.
So when I grew up in New
You
York,
walk in the hall.
I
That
went
ain't
to my
nothing.
first funeral. There were two
Words.
brothers that
You don't
lived
need none
in
of
the
that.
building next to mine that were
Teacher be
murdered.
salty as that.
Both of them were shot in the head. I was in the 6th grade. And it wasn't really an anomaly. It wasn't a strange thing. You know, it was kind of what it was during that time in New York City. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we used to say is, you know, is to hope that you make it until to age 21. Right? And that was what we talked about all the time, making it to 21. So before I turned 21, I lost about 4 or 5 friends to the streets. When I was 17, I had to eulogize one of my friends. His name is Dwayne. He was shot in the neck at a party that I decided not to go to. So,
Why are you looking at me?
but
Could've
you
been
know, there is a sense of hopelessness. There is a sense of you know, life without purpose, and so you end up finding some purpose, right? Some sense of purpose in the streets, right? And you kind of get stuck in that world unless you're exposed to something different, or you set goals, right? You strive to get out of that environment or to do something different with yourselves. So for those of you who know someone who is incarcerated or has been incarcerated, do you think prison helped them? Do you think it made them a different person, for better or for worse?
I think it depends on how long you're in there.
Okay.
Some people get
Why?
institutionalized.
And what you in there
for a
for?
long time,
Yeah.
and they can't change when they get out. That's all they know.
And I think it's for what they in there for too. That could change you.
Mhm.
Cause you gonna be in there thinking about what you did to get where you are now. So
Some people it could change, but some people it can't.
Why do you think that is?
Because there's some people, they still have life and they feel like jail is their home. They feel like that's the only way that they're gonna do better. Because they feel like if they do come in the real world, they know nothing. So it's like, what's the point in trying? And it could also like change a lot of people because they realize that what they did was not something that, it could have been changed. It could have been, you know, in a different way.
Do you all know people who have been to jail, come back out, and then end up going back to jail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
my little brother.
So why does that happen? It's part of what we do as prosecutors. When we see someone like that, we're like, why are they back here again?
My brother's been in jail 1,000 of times.
Right?
My little brother's 14, been in jail 9 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what is there any way to help them?
No.
No.
They gotta see rock bottom first, and then they go back, oh, this is what it looks like. I don't wanna be here again.
So 9 times isn't rock bottom.
Nah,
How many?
I don't know. You asking the wrong person.
Sometimes it takes 1,000 times for
Yeah, I
somebody
seen
to
that
know.
on TV too. One guy been to jail 1,000 times. Wow. That's not, I mean, that's crazy.
So-
TV.
I think he said it does take a good smack of reality kind of. Some guys, like, I used to work in corrections before I worked with the FBI, so I used to see it. And I know you talk about, you know, I grew up in the north end of Springfield. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Springfield, but it's just as bad as Hartford. And I saw a lot of my friends, some of them got shot, some of them end up in jail, and they disappear for a while. And I'm working at the jail, and I'm hearing my name called out from the tiers up top, and it's a guy that I haven't seen in like 5-6 years because he got arrested or whatever. But I think you hit it when you said like it depends on how much time they're doing. We very rarely see guys that go into jail for 10 years come out and go back. But when they're doing these 2-year bids and stuff, and they get frustrated and they get right back into it, and they go right back to the same crew of guys that they were hanging with that got them in trouble. But while they were in jail, they didn't even see them for 2 years. So, you know, that gets a little frustrating on our end, where we end up seeing the same guys over and over again and not doing absolutely nothing with their lives, you know. So maybe he might have hit it when, you know, sometimes it takes a severe sentence or something serious to happen for them to finally realize that this ain't for me.
So,
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, one of the hardest parts of our job is, you know, after a case has been investigated, when it's prosecuted, and they've either gone to trial and been found guilty, or they plead guilty, is sentencing. You know, in almost all the cases, you know, before the defendant is getting sentenced, he has some family members there, or at least a friend or somebody who are, you know, sort of the innocent bystanders to all this. You know, it could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be a sibling. And they're always asking the court and for us to, for some leniency, like don't send them to jail for as long as maybe they could go to jail. And that's a hard part for us because, you know, our goal is, you know, we're trying to do the right thing in the sense of what's justice. Like, what did this person do and what's an appropriate sentence? We have to balance that with how it will impact other people. Not only their family, it can affect their community. Maybe their person has value. Maybe they have a position in the community like a teacher, or they do something, but they also did something really bad. And one of the things that's always the most interesting to me is to hear a family member or a friend or somebody who knows the defendant speak on their behalf to say what they're like and how it will impact, you know, me or the child, if they're leaving behind a child. And that's always hard to balance. So I'd be curious to know, especially the ones that have had family members and people that you know come in and out of jail, like how does it affect you? I mean, do you think it matters in that sentence that should be imposed, how it affects someone that they're close to? Or maybe it doesn't matter, that they did what they did and they should serve the punishment regardless of how it affects you. So especially you two guys who have family members that are in and out, I mean, do you find that to be an important part as to how it affects you?
It's expensive because both of my brothers are in there, so my mom got to be sending both of them money, and the stuff in there is expensive.
Collect phone calls?
Collect phone calls, the TVs, everything, and the TVs be so little, and it costs like $250 for a little flat screen TV.
I don't know, cause he's not really like he's going to jail. He's just detention, but
Right.
it's still the same. Like it's still you going there for like 2 months at a time. Like,
Isn't jail and prison different though?
Well,
Jail's usually, you know, up to, like a county jail would be, you know, 2 years. Anything past that, you're going to prison.
well, federal, you know, for us, it's a big change, even for the guys that have been through the system.
Federal prison?
So federal prisons are all,
Yeah, they're all over.
It depends on the level of security too.
penitentiaries are the worst.
Yeah.
That's
That's
a
a penitentiary?
so my grandma went to jail too.
Your grandma did?
Yeah. Grand Bedford. From the Mark Twain House in Hartford.
Connecticut have a prison or no?
Say again?
Just
No, they do.
Connecticut.
Connecticut has Danbury.
Yeah, that's
which
where
used
she
to
went,
be
the
a
women's prison
all
up
women's,
top.
but I guess they're.
They
probably
switched
men.
over, yeah, they switched over. It used
The
to be
bottom
just women.
the bottom jail is men now, and then the top
Yeah.
one is like is women for.
They've
I
been
think the
moving men.
closest one's in Philadelphia. Or Pennsylvania.
I don't even know what
New
incarceration
York,
meant.
Towns.
I don't even know what incarceration meant.
So in last chance high, Crystal, right? She broke her teacher's wrist. Or she actually broke her teacher's arm, just below the wrist.
That's gold.
And she got into a fight with her teacher. And she did 3 months in juvie,
Wow.
right? And so, a lot of the stuff that I do with Project Longevity, we're trying to keep guys from going to prison or being buried. And, you know, so, you know, but oftentimes we see guys who've been incarcerated over and over again. And they also have been involved with juvenile detention, you know, when they were younger. And they were doing things like 3 months or these short periods of incarceration or detention. And with your brother, you know, you're saying he's doing 2 months here, 2 months there. Do you think that matters? Do you think that's the right remedy for him? Or do you think he
He's not
should
changing. He ain't
have
changing
some
at all.
sort of,
Well, now he is, but that's just because he on the bracelet and he can't leave the house.
okay.
He just, like, I don't know. It's just, I try to tell him like, no, you don't want to be there. Like, you might think it's sweet in there or whatever, good food time, you get to relax.
He didn't get to a real jail
Other
yet.
than that, like, you don't want to get used to that because you gonna come outside like, what the hell? All looking all crazy and shit. I don't know.
He's 14, is that what you said?
Yeah, he's like 14, 15.
Do you talk to your brothers?
Mhm.
What do they say?
They jail talk. They always have some type of mindset, but when they come
What are they
out, it
trying
lasts for like a month.
Are they trying to steer you in the right direction? You don't want to be here like us, that kind of stuff? I mean, they doing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, they always do that. Because my brothers and they want the best for me, but they need to take their own advice.
You ever tell them that the best thing for me is for you guys to stay out of jail?
They don't listen.
It is the best.
So that's a big disconnect we see, that a lot of people, you know, they use that at sentencing. They'll argue to the judge, like, you know, when you put me in jail, I'm gonna be, you know, my family's gonna be torn apart, I'm not gonna see my kids, and
How about
the
the
easy
film
comeback is
being
like, well,
there?
maybe you shouldn't have done that, right? I mean, it's not our fault that you found yourself in this position, and so you need to start thinking about that. It's hard. I mean, that's, I think, a real disconnect for us, is trying to instill that sort of, or trying to make people think about the consequences of my actions will be, I could go to prison. And for us, if you end up in federal court, if you're lucky enough to go to Danbury, most people don't. You're far away. And that first federal trial I had when I came to this office 12 years ago, was a guy who was doing robberies, street robberies, like, you know, gambling, and when he gets sentenced, the judge sentenced him to 21 years, and his mom was there, and his sister was there.
I would have cried.
And they were afraid. They were like, you know, when will we see you again? And,
21.
and so he gets taken out of the courtroom, and he had to come back 4 years later for a resentencing. And I never forget it. He walks into the courtroom with the marshals, and his mom was there and his sister were there, and they can't touch him or hold him or anything, but they're like, they had literally not seen him for 4 years because they couldn't afford to go out. He was out in western Pennsylvania, and they couldn't go see him. And so they talked about it. They literally not seen him. The judge resentenced them to get a little bit of a break at 20 years, and I'm pretty sure they've not seen him.
Wait, they resent 1 year less?
1 year less.
20 years, yeah, 1 year less. And
What
some
is that?
complicated legal stuff.
I would be so tight.
I would what? 1 year? Well, he looking at it already. That's 1 year left. Because he don't want to
That's
end it.
teasing somebody.
It's not teasing, bro.
That's an insult.
That's like teasing you, like, yeah, like,
18, 19.
you listen to my sentence 1 year.
It's federal.
Yeah, give me that year.
Probably what, early
Serve pretty much
probation
almost
or
all of your
something.
Time, yeah.
Serve 85% of your time. That's if you're a good prisoner. So in his best case scenario, he'd serve
My brother's a
17.
good prisoner. He coming out this year.
Yeah.
State
level, it's a little
No,
different.
they're
It's a little
not that
different.
State's different.
What?
And
No,
two guys
they're
get
not
shot
even
at
touching. Yeah, they
defense
is.
system when they get arrested.
Yeah, they is over there.
Across the street.
They don't, like, they're used to getting arrested, oh, I'm gonna be out today and tonight, you know, calling bonds and things like that. There is no bail system.
We call it baby
Feds-
trash,
feds
that's
are
why.
issue. You gotta have your family put up property in straight cash.
I know. I seen someone have to do that.
So like when someone goes to prison, you know, their family who are on the outside, they do the bid too, right? So it's like Cortez, right? He hadn't seen his father in 8 years, and his father will never be let out of prison. And the only way he was able to see his father is because he had someone from this the school's board of
Bring him.
education bring him up there, you know, and you
That's
can-
real.
you know, his father broke down and cried. And, you know, everything he told Cortez was just, don't follow my footsteps. But it seems like Cortez is headed down that direction. I know a guy in
You talking about
Bridgeport.
when he came out to talk to him
Yep,
for the first time?
he hadn't seen his father in 8 years.
When I was watching that, I felt very empathetic. Like, you know, you feel like, wow, this guy doesn't seem like that bad of a guy. I mean, I don't know his history, what he did. Obviously, must be something very serious. And you feel really bad for Cortez because now he's affected for his whole life. But you see also, like, some kids, like, no, I don't want to see my father and that, you know, like, want nothing to do with that. And here he's trying to build a relationship, which is obviously going to be a long-distance relationship and a tough relationship to try to have. And it's like, you said he probably may never get out of jail,
Mhm.
you know?
I see a lot of that through Project Longevity. So I know a guy who never met his father. His father's doing life in a federal prison.
Those are the ones that don't
And-
care.
I'm sorry?
They don't be caring. When they gotta do life, they don't be caring. They be turning up in there.
Nothing to lose, I guess. And he never knew his father, but basically followed in his father's footsteps. And he actually learned about his father through some of the drug addicts that he was selling drugs to, that his father used to sell drugs to. And he served 7 years. And when I met him, he had just met his daughter for the first time who was 7 years old, who was born while he was incarcerated. And he was recently reincarcerated. And so now his daughter is she probably will grow up the same way he did, without a father figure in her life. And so oftentimes, incarceration, it can go either way, right? You know, you can look at the person, if it's your parent, or an older brother or sister, and say, I'm not gonna be anything like that. Sometimes if you don't have their guidance, you follow in their footsteps and it repeats itself. So I've seen families where there are 3 generations of incarceration. You know, and it devastates the family because they're also serving that time as well. And like you said, it's expensive. It can cost as much as $15 for a 15-minute phone call.
It costs a lot of money.
No,
I
I
don't
was
know
always
if
wondering
they're
about,
gonna
is
play
it
ball.
expensive because they're trying to recoup some of the money back for, you know what I mean? Like, it's obviously
20 seconds.
shouldn't cost
Holla at
$1,000
you.
for a phone call, you know
You
what
be
I
like, hi, bye,
mean?
I love
Is it
you,
a way
that's
to kind of generate some revenue?
I'm like, yo,
It's not. Well, I think a lot of the, in the federal system, they contract that phone service out. So, I mean, so the facility gets money from the cell phone provider or the service provider, but it's really, it shouldn't really be that expensive, but they have an audience that has no choice. There's no competition, this is what you get. So,
what does the jail use, like Verizon or something?
it's different facilities use different companies, but because also those calls have to be monitored, so there's a whole system in place that the calls are recorded, and so it's expensive for the provider, but they're not in it because they're
You
making
guys
money.
feel bad if like you prosecuted somebody and they did like 16 years, right? And then they was found unguilty, like it was proven that they didn't do it.
I would feel badly. I mean, I feel pretty confident that, you know, I've never felt that.
Taking everybody money in that court.
You know, when
That would be the worst thing for a prosecutor, I think, to wake up and realize that someone,
You put somebody in jail that
yeah,
didn't
that
do it.
didn't do it, yeah.
There's a Tom guy, I don't know if you
They
probably
did
told
it,
me,
they did
you've
it.
probably heard his name or met him before. East Harvard guy, he did 18 years
You talk about James
for a
Tillman.
crime he didn't commit, yeah.
James Tillman.
Well, James Kelly too.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
I actually
yeah.
had him when I was in middle school come speak to our kids and stuff, and
Oh, wow.
he wasn't bitter at all. You would think he'd be so angry, and he just,
Of course he not. He got like 500.
yeah, but it's not the money.
When
Trust
you
me,
do
would you
18
take
years
$5
for
million
nothing,
to
you
go
gonna
to
be
jail
humble.
for 18 years?
You gonna come
Hell,
out humble as
You
hell.
know, let's put it,
You said, wait, how much?
Million each year.
How long he did?
Give me like 10. Give me like
I need
18
18
Out of
years.
3 years, come on.
I'll be good with
No
18.
lie,
I need
do 18
billions,
years, 18
trillions,
million.
everything. What are you
I do
talking
18
about?
years.
I need money.
18 years, that's 20 years. You know how many iPhones
And a
came
throw
out
a car on
over
top of that,
that
I register my record explains
You know how
all
many
of that.
hella albums, music, phones, everything. Hella
Yeah, yeah,
changed since then.
yeah.
Like what? 20 years is a long time.
Big finesse.
You cannot know.
And what happens to them? Like, did they get in trouble? Like,
Yeah, y'all should
because
be
the person, they put somebody in jail that wasn't supposed to be in jail?
No, I mean, it doesn't usually happen that way. Most of the time, it's what we call sort of faulty identification witnesses. That's generally considered the least reliable. People, if you're getting robbed and it's a traumatic event, or you're getting sexually assaulted, and you think you don't know the person, so you see some pictures and you pick that person, you think that's who it is, and that's the only evidence. And now a lot of these people are being set free because the scientific evidence is better for the sex assaults. The DNA testing is much better now than it was even 10 years ago. So they're able to identify or in more cases than not eliminate the person as a suspect. But
Females be setting people up.
I mean,
Talking about
Don't rob me, I'm grabbing
Nah, but
your
if
hair,
you
I'm
lie,
looking for
like,
evidence. I'm
because
taking
once you
pieces
do
of
that,
hair out, everything.
if you lie, you
This
go to
is
jail.
right here, scamming me.
niggas be
Scared of me.
shit.
Yeah,
Niggas set niggas up. I'm telling you.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Forget.
That's ruining somebody's life.
What other questions you guys have?
I don't even snitch.
Anything else?
Just touch base on that stuff though, and, you know, when the feds are doing cases though, they're not 2-3 weeks long, it's years, months long, and a lot of hours, and there's video and audio, and, I mean, I don't think we've ever had a case like that, you know, thank God.
even on the violence stuff, when witness may come in and you said something about snitching. I mean, we view it very differently. I mean, there's just a culture out there that is really difficult, makes it difficult for us to to do our job, but I mean, I have people that are victims, that have been robbed and shot.
You
that
guys-
won't-
Yeah, but
guys use
I've
that
done
as help.
seen people
To us,
have
that's like-
papers
that's
of
like asking-
statements.
asking
Like,
to
why would
die,
y'all
like-
release statements?
Like you could really be killed like for that. Like
Well, that's a big thing.
If it's
Well,
like,
it says the
if someone robs
person's
you,
name
why
and
can't you
stuff
come
at
and
the
tell me who
bottom.
did it?
because then that person when you go to find that person, you're like, didn't I just
Like, that's
rob
like
this
causing
dude?
another murder.
And nobody was there
asking
except
for
for
somebody
him.
else to be dead.
Why are the police at my house? Right?
Right.
Then you gonna go, okay, so you gonna walk up to you, you don't know what he's gonna do.
Do you think the police can
Whatever the
protect you
case
from that?
Witness protection, I've been heard about that, no.
No, definitely not.
What about the FBI?
I don't know.
Nah.
Well, you better put me in another state.
Well, I don't know.
You better put me in another state, change my name, change my skin color,
My name
everything.
Timothy.
For real.
My name
It's
I
not.
wanna be a
it's a
Britney.
second option.
I'm
Put me
gonna
under
real white. I'm
Britney.
gonna start like I'm gonna own a farm and shit. Everything.
Back in here, right? You gonna look like a redneck.
I'm gonna put a straw hat on and shit. Everything. Ain't no Jordan here.
You heard.
So,
Who the fuck is JP?
sometimes a lot of the guys that I deal with, so I may speak with someone who was robbed and shot.
Oh, his hair been bigger.
And, so part of like the don't snitch, that whole thing, a lot of it is, they don't wanna get exposed, right? They don't want people to know that they've spoken with someone in law enforcement and given a name or identified
Or
someone.
even when they get like
I see
shot or
personally-
something, you gotta go and like sit up there and
How come they don't do first party?
Ain't a lot of crime.
Well, if any of you guys in here had a family member that was shot and you
I was
saw it,
shot before and they asked me to point my finger at the person
and you
like-
said no,
and I said no.
why?
Because we live in the same neighborhood. His family knows me. They gonna try to do something. And my brother's already crazy enough.
But they know that. See, that's the problem. If they're preying on the fact that you won't talk, and that puts them right back on the street to do it again. And that's and as Gennaro was saying, is that the hard part is, and I remember talking to a person I was trying to help cooperate. Cooperate, just tell me the truth. And he's just like, well, you just do your job. My job isn't to help you do your job. I'm like, it actually is. I mean, it's not for me to decide whether someone goes to jail. I need evidence. And that evidence is often what a witness saw or heard. And so I gave him an example. I said, what if, I gave him a really simple one. What if your mom was driving down the street and she got hit? A car accident, right? And she was really injured and she had no money and there was a witness there that could say it wasn't her fault, it was that guy. And that, so if that happened, you know, your mom could get the money to pay for a medical bill, she didn't have insurance, to fix the car. Wouldn't you want that person to help your mom? And he's just thinking to himself, he goes, yeah, I guess you're right. And so you have to think about it, how does it affect you? I mean, I understand that there's a fear, and we deal with that all the time. I can't tell you how many people we've had where I've talked in a room a lot smaller than this, where they said, look, I'm afraid. I said, I will do everything in my power to make sure nothing happens to you or your family. If I have to move you out of the state of Connecticut, I will move you out of the state of Connecticut. A lot of times it's moving someone to New Britain.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't have to move very far.
Yeah.
They offer my mother the hours.
And most people are just talk. They talk. And the ones that are complaining the most, I used to tell the guys that would come in, I would ask them, like, all of our federal inmates are kept in Rhode Island. And I would say, well, who's out there, who's talking about who's snitching out there? And they would tell me that they're talking this guy, this guy, this guy. And I know who's talking because they're talking to us. And half the time they're wrong. And I said to them, I always tell them, I said, the ones that are going around talking about who's snitching, is probably the one who's snitching.
Yeah.
Hey.
They're voting on every now voting.
But the change has to sort of start at the grassroots of your community, right? Your neighborhood. If there's someone in your neighborhood that's dangerous, that's shooting people or hurting people, I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that that person is taken off the street. And, you know, I know in my neighborhood, I mean, if there's a suspicious car parked across the street, people call the police.
But think about it like this: we can't take care of it ourselves because then we're gonna go to jail. But then you can't snitch either because then people gonna be like,
You was snitch,
So
yeah.
that put us in the middle. Like, what the fuck we do?
That's why you just stick to yourself.
And I was the only witness. I was the only
That's why it has to change. You have to accept, and trust me, we see it. I see mothers not wanting us to talk to their kids. I get it. I mean, there's nothing that you're saying here that I haven't or we haven't heard 1,000 times. And that's why it can't just, one person can't change it. You have to change the attitude about it. And it's so, you know what? I was hurt. You know, I remember talking to these young women who were a victim of a home invasion. These guys came in, they're shooting, the police showed up, there was a gunfight, and she talked to the police, and she knew the guys from the neighborhood, and she said it was so-and-so, even though he had a mask. I grew up with the guy at so-and-so. He gets arrested, and it wasn't the guy that got arrested was angry, it was people in our own neighborhood saying, what are you talking to the police for? And I remember thinking to myself, but you're a victim. They came in your house and stole your stuff with guns and were shooting at people, and yet the neighborhood is treating you like you're the problem. And that's why, that's one of the hardest things that we do, is trying to affect that change and say, you know what, it's okay. You know, if my child was beaten up at school or assaulted or shot, I can guarantee you I would do everything I could to find out who it was.
How would they know that somebody was talking to them? Unless the person had said they were talking.
For some people write statements, you gotta sign your name.
What happens with the statements?
They could get the statements. The other person could get the statements.
So we don't normally do that. We don't give up witness statements.
I done seen people
I know, state court's
snitch
different.
give the statements up.
State court's different, like you said. On the Fed side, you don't, we're not in the business of putting you out there like that. You know what I mean? That's what I kind of tell people that cooperate with us.
That's it.
It doesn't help me, it doesn't help them.
But most of the time, everybody already know who snitched.
It's not like you know what, don't believe, I tell, anytime we do these talks, don't believe what you see in TV and the movies. First of all, it's clearly not like that at all. I mean, that's an hour program that they're gonna shove everything in there. I mean, it takes a long time to get a warrant, it takes, you know, everything takes a long time on the Fed side. And then, what, like you were saying on informants and things of that nature, yeah, I'm telling you, there's guys that have worked as long as I've been here and nobody even knows.
I mean, that happened with Cortez's dad, right? I don't know if you guys remember. He said that it was his father's girlfriend who snitched on him.
We got a flat screen TV here.
Can you just realize
That's not what we talking about.
He's scoping out the
I
room.
didn't say it, but like, why is it there?
I said the same thing.
So, you know, a lot of what I see with Project Longevity is I get the guys who are afraid to provide a statement, or but I also get guys who want revenge. And on both ends, it shows me that they have a lack of confidence in law enforcement. And I try to explain to them, it's their job, right? Like, well, that's the business that they're in. Leave the retaliation, or not the retaliation, but leave that up to law enforcement, because there are guys who say, you know what, he shot my brother. And we try to talk him down, because that person they're in a position of power, right? So they have the opportunity to squash the beef, they have the opportunity to make sure that nothing happens, or at least to give voice to that. And I try to explain to guys, you know, that sometimes your plans for revenge can go awry, right? Sometimes you may end up becoming a victim or getting locked up and doing significant time. So it's a lose-lose situation. You know, you don't win if you're the victim. You don't benefit from not providing a testimony or giving a statement or giving some information to law enforcement. And if you decide to take matters in your own hands, again, you lose on that end as well. And I think the best thing that you can do is to cooperate as much as possible, because it gives law enforcement the opportunity to break the cycle of violence by making sure that, you know, their investigative efforts lead towards getting the bad guys off the streets.
But what's the point of, okay, you already know the person that shot you. What's the point of them going in front of everybody that's at court to point the finger at someone?
You said something?
Like in a courtroom.
Yeah, like when the witness gotta sit there but she already, like, they already told you, like, you already knew the person that shot you, you identified them in the picture.
It doesn't always happen that way. Very few cases actually ever get to trial. A lot of times, the person, once they know that there's a witness out there just willing to come into court, if it ever gets that far, they'll plead guilty. I mean, the percentage of cases that are resolved with a guilty plea are in the federal system, it's over 90%. So very few cases actually go to trial.
Is that because if they don't, like,
I think the
I'm
person
good
Because of all the
itself,
hard work and
Yeah,
due
does the
diligence,
case
right?
usually more
years
because if they don't
trial
come forward
lose,
like at that point,
the sentence be
after
worse?
that, like it could be, like a sentence could be
Could
worse.
be longer, yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
If you say
yeah,
not
hell
guilty,
yeah.
what you are.
Like if he was asking like about the trials and stuff, if sometimes we'll go to court and the evidence against somebody is just overwhelming. You know what I mean? What are you gonna argue the video and audio about you selling drugs or whatever it was that you did? You know, they wanna take it to trial, so be it, and that's their right to do so, but the U.S. Attorney's Office is gonna put together a reasonable package, like, listen, we'll settle this right now, take your 10-year hit, if you go to trial, you're
It's
gonna
gonna
be
be
looking
more.
at 20.
Wow.
So I'm the bearer of bad news. Looks like lively discussion. The buses are here momentarily, so we're going to dismiss. Anything else that anybody wanted to ask, or if not, I would love for our students to give our
Wait,
panel
what?
a round
What
of
do
applause.
y'all work for? I didn't
With
even.
an ABA
I didn't.
championship.
Oh, yeah, you're
Wasn't
late,
here.
so you guys came in late. So Sarah and I are assistant United States attorneys, we're federal prosecutors. Sarah works in New Haven, I work here in Hartford, and Gennaro's an FBI agent in Hartford.
And I'm Brent, and I'm the statewide coordinator
Son.
of Project Longevity.
Round of applause. Sit tight for a second. Round of applause. Stop that. I'm going to take a